I have to be honest with you, I've been sitting here for probably the last hour just staring at the title page of this paper.
Oh, this one. Yeah, it's a doozy.
I've got my coffee, which is now completely cold, by the way. I've got my highlighter, a stack of notes that looks like, I don't know, the ravings of a madman, but this title,
Yeah.
it is just a lot to take in. Ontology and the Teleological Foundation of Partnership Civilization.
It certainly doesn't roll off the tongue, does it?
Not at all.
It sounds like something you'd find buried in the dusty back corner of a university archives room
Yeah.
in a box that hasn't been opened since 1974.
Exactly. It sounds like homework, like hard homework. But, and this is a massive but, once I actually forced myself past all the academic jargon and just started reading the arguments, I couldn't put it down.
Ah, so you got past the cover.
I did, and it's absolutely mind-blowing stuff. It's dense, sure, but it feels necessary. Like it's answering a question I didn't even know I was asking.
I'm glad you pushed through. It is dense, I'll give you that. It certainly doesn't scream light beach reading. But you're right. The content inside is incredibly provocative.
Provocative is a good word for it.
It's taking a sledgehammer to some very popular, very comfortable ideas, not to destroy them, but to stress test them, to see if they can actually hold any weight when the pressure is really on.
Right. And for anyone listening who is familiar with Riane Eisler, you know her work is legendary.
Absolutely. The chalice and the blade.
Exactly. She gave us this whole concept of partnership versus domination cultures. And the idea is that, for most of recorded history, we've been stuck in these domination systems, hierarchies, patriarchy, war, conquest.
The blade part of the cut.
The blade, and that we need to move toward partnership, cooperation, equality, mutual respect. The chalice.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful idea. I mean, I love that idea. Who wouldn't want that?
It is a compelling vision, a very powerful one.
Yeah.
But here is the tension, and this is where our source material for today comes in. The paper basically says, Riane, you are absolutely right about the sociology. You describe the problem perfectly, but your philosophy, it's built on quicksand.
And that's the hook, isn't it? The source is arguing that having a good social idea like partnership, it just isn't enough.
Not even close.
You can't just say partnership is nice, let's do that. You have to prove that partnership is actually aligned with, well, the deep structure of reality itself.
Precisely. And that is where that scary word from the title comes back in. Ontology.
Ontology. Okay, let's demystify that immediately before people tune out thinking we're about to start a 3-hour university seminar.
Fair enough. It sounds intimidating, but it's not. Ontology is just a fancy philosophical word for the study of being.
The study of being.
It just asks, what is real? What is the fundamental nature of existence? Is the universe just a random collection of atoms bumping into each other in a void? Or is there a structure to it?
A grain.
A grain. I like that analogy. And the argument this paper makes is that if you don't anchor your social theories in ontology, in the actual fabric of how the universe is wired, then your entire movement is doomed to fail. It just becomes a preference.
And that's the mission for this deep dive. We aren't just talking about politics or sociology today. We are going to explore why partnership isn't just a nice preference, but might actually be, well, the only way the universe is allowed to work in the long run.
We're going to look at a critique that doesn't just tear Eisler's work down, but actually tries to reconstruct it from the ground up on a much stronger foundation.
Right. So to do that, we have a roadmap. We can't just jump straight to the solution. We have to really understand the problem first.
Correct. So first, we have to look at what Eisler got right, the diagnosis. The source is very, very clear that her observations of society are brilliant.
Okay, so credit where it's due.
Absolutely. Second, we have to look at the error, the philosophical crack in the foundation, where her theory collapses because it lacks that ontological grounding.
The quicksand you mentioned.
The quicksand. And then finally, the reconstruction. How do we fix it? How do we build a case that goodness is actually real and that domination is, in a very literal sense, a violation of reality?
Okay, let's do it. Let's unpack this. Part 1 then. The diagnosis. Even though the author ends up critiquing Eisler heavily on the philosophy side, they start by saying, look, she nailed the description of the problem.
She did, unquestionably. Eisler's cultural transformation theory is praised in this source for recognizing that humans don't exist in vacuums. We live in what the source calls nested networks of meaning.
Nested networks of meaning. I really like that phrase. It sounds cozy, but I think it implies something much more complex. It sounds like a spider web. If you touch one part, the whole thing vibrates.
That's a great way to put it. It means you can't just change one thing and expect the world to magically change with it. We often hear politicians say things like, if we just pass this one law, or if we just change this one economic policy, everything will be fixed.
Right, the silver bullet solution.
And Eisler, in our source, agrees, says no.
No,
Naive.
wow.
You can't just change the government. The family structure, the economic system, the religious symbols, the political institutions, they're all interdependent. They all feed into each other and reinforce each other.
Okay, so give me an example. If you have, say, a domination-style family structure where the father rules with an iron fist and the mother and children have no voice.
Then you are going to produce children who are psychologically primed to expect a government that rules with an iron fist.
Ah, I see.
They will view that as normal, as the natural order of things. So if you try to impose a democracy on top of a society where every single family unit is a mini dictatorship, that democracy won't stick.
The nested network will reject it. It's like a foreign body.
It'll reject it, or it'll warp it into something that looks like democracy but functions like a dictatorship. You get the feedback loop.
The family trains the citizen supports the state, and then the state enforces the laws that shape the family. It's a closed circle.
Precisely. And the source highlights that Eisler was brilliant at identifying the specific traits of these domination cultures. These aren't just random bad things happening. They are a system, a coherent, self-reinforcing system.
Okay, so what are some of those traits?
Well, the source lists a few that it says are historically defensible. Things like coercive authority, rigid hierarchies, and the instrumentalization of persons.
That phrase, instrumentalization of persons, always chills me a bit.
It's a cold one.
It sounds so clinical, so academic, but it's actually horrific. It's basically just using people as tools, right?
It's exactly it.
Like, you aren't a human being with a soul, with intrinsic worth. You are a unit of production for my empire. You're a cog in my machine.
Exactly. In a domination system, your value is determined by your utility to the person or system in power. If you are useful, you are kept. If you are not useful or if you become inconvenient, you are discarded.
And that ties into the other traits, I imagine.
It does. Along with that comes extraction-based economies taking from nature or from other people without replenishing, and cultural narratives that sacralize power.
Sacralize power. Okay, what does that mean? We make power into a god.
Essentially, yes. It means we tell stories where the guy with the biggest sword or the biggest bank account is the hero simply because he has the power. We conflate might with right.
So think of how many action movies or, historical epics basically boil down to this guy is the good guy because he killed the other guy more efficiently.
Exactly. The winner writes the history, and the history says the winner was righteous. The source argues that Eisler sees this disease with perfect clarity. She sees normalized violence. She sees that if our relationships are sick, our entire civilization is sick.
So the source absolutely agrees with her on this. Eisler sees the symptoms. She sees the fever, the infection, the rot in the system. And the diagnosis is historically defensible. You look at history, Assyria, Rome, feudal Europe, countless examples, and you see these patterns of domination everywhere. It's undeniable.
Correct. No one is disputing that domination has been the primary operating system for a huge chunk of human history.
So here is where it gets really interesting for me. If she's right about the system, if she's right about the sickness, what's the problem?
Right.
Why did this author feel the need to write this incredibly dense academic paper correcting her? Why not just say, great job, Riane, we're all on board, and move on?
Because diagnosis isn't the same as a cure. And maybe more importantly, a diagnosis isn't the same as a justification for the cure.
Okay.
The author of our source argues that Eisler explains what is happening, but she can't prove why it's objectively wrong in a way that sticks, in a way that can stand up to a real challenge.
And this brings us to part 2, the foundational error. The source calls this beginning without being. And okay, this is where we have to put on our thinking caps, because this is the philosophical heavy lifting.
It is, but it's absolutely crucial. The source argues that Eisler assumes moral progress. This movement from domination to partnership just sort of emerges from cultural evolution.
The idea that we try things, we learn, we get better.
Right. It assumes that humanity is naturally, slowly moving up a staircase toward enlightenment.
But that sounds reasonable to me, though. I mean, we used to think slavery was okay, now most of us don't. We used to think women shouldn't vote, now most of us think that's absurd. That's progress, isn't it? We are evolving.
It is progress, certainly. No one is denying that.
Right.
But the core question is, why is it progress? By what standard are you measuring it? The source calls Eisler's approach teleology without source.
Okay, teleology. That's the second big Greek word of the day. We need to break that down.
Teleology comes from the Greek word telos, which means an end, a purpose, or a goal. If something has a teleology, it has a destination it's supposed to reach.
Like an acorn.
Yeah.
An acorn has a teleology, and that is to become an oak tree.
Perfect example.
Mm.
And if it becomes a rotten mush on the ground, it has failed its teleology.
Got it. So Eisler is saying humanity's teleology, our destination, is partnership.
Correct. But here's the problem the source points out. Eisler frames partnership as better and domination as worse, without a metaphysical standard, without an external, objective, ultimate good.
Okay, I think I see where this is going. If there is no ultimate good outside of us, if there's no God or truth with a capital T or cosmic law, whatever you want to call it, then saying partnership is better than domination is just an opinion.
Exactly. It's like saying, I prefer chocolate to vanilla.
Yeah.
It's a statement of taste. You might prefer partnership. It feels nicer to you. It's psychologically more comfortable. You like cooperation.
But the Genghis Khans of history.
They prefer domination. They like the power. They like the conquest. It worked for them. And without an objective standard that exists outside of your preference and his preference, who is to say you are right and Genghis Khan is wrong?
That is actually a terrifying thought. Because if it's just a preference, then the person with the biggest army gets to decide which preference becomes the rule.
That is the moral emergence problem, as identified in the source. And this is the deep danger of relying solely on cultural evolution for your morality. If morality just emerges from what we decide as a culture, then domination isn't objectively wrong. It's just a different system with different values.
So if, and this is a dark path to go down, but if the Nazis had won World War II,
and if they'd successfully established a global culture that lasted for 1,000 years, where every child was taught from birth that the strong should crush the weak, that is the moral good.
Then, according to the emergent logic, that would become the new moral truth.
Because there would be no one left to say otherwise. The cultural consensus would have shifted.
Wow.
The source has a key phrase for this, and it's worth remembering. Moral evaluation becomes contingent on cultural consensus rather than reality itself.
Which is a very, very fragile place to build a civilization, because cultural consensus changes. I mean, we just saw it. In the 1930s in Germany, the cultural consensus shifted terrifyingly fast toward a very dark form of domination.
It did.
And if your only standard is what society thinks is right, then you have no ground to stand on to say, no, this is wrong, even if everyone I know agrees with it.
Precisely. You need a standard that stands outside of culture in order to judge culture. Otherwise, you're just following the crowd wherever it happens to be going.
So the source is essentially saying Eisler's theory is teleologically inert.
Yes.
It has no engine. It describes a really nice-looking car, the partnership car, but there's nothing under the hood.
Mm-hmm.
It can't explain why reality would favor that destination over, say, a boot stamping on a human face forever, as Orwell put it.
Right. It leaves us with direction without destination. Without what the source calls metaphysical anchoring, domination is just as natural as cooperation. In fact, if you just look at the animal kingdom or huge swaths of human history, you can make a pretty strong case that domination is more natural.
The survival of the fittest.
Exactly. So why should we expect civilization to magically move toward partnership? Eisler doesn't really have an answer other than it would be nice or it's more efficient for long-term survival. But our source wants to give us a much stronger answer, a bedrock answer.
And that bedrock answer lies in part 3, the fix. This is where we get into the ontology, the nature of reality itself. We're not just patching the house anymore, we're pouring a whole new concrete foundation.
And it starts with a very bold, very classic claim. Being is good.
Being is good.
This is a classic philosophical stance, going all the way back to Plato and Augustine, but it's applied here specifically to social theory. The source argues we absolutely must start with the premise that reality is not neutral. It's not a blank canvas. Existence itself flows from an ultimate good.
Okay, now hold on. Being is good. I have to push back on this, or at least play devil's advocate.
Please do.
I look at the news, I see earthquakes, I see cancer, I see wars, I see mosquitoes. Reality seems pretty chaotic and, frankly, often very cruel. What does the source mean by ultimate good? Are we talking about a guy in the clouds with a long white beard?
No, not at all. The source defines the good very specifically, and it's not religious in that sense. It's not just a moral rule book, and it's not just pleasant vibes.
Okay.
The good is defined as that which is life-generating, relationally coherent, and self-giving rather than self-consuming. Good is that which allows a being to flourish according to its nature.
So good is functional. It's the set of conditions that allows existence to work properly.
Yes, exactly. Think of it this way. Health is good for a body. Why?
Because it lets the body live and grow and do what a body is supposed to do.
Right. And sickness is bad because it stops the body from being itself. It disrupts its function. The source is basically scaling that up to the entire universe. It's saying the universe as a whole has a health setting, and that setting is relational, generative, and cooperative. Existence wants to be.
Okay, I can follow that logic. Existence prefers to exist rather than not exist. And to keep existing, you need cooperation, you need coherence, you need things to work together. But that leads to the obvious next question. If being is good, then what is evil?
Right.
Because, again, looking around the world, there seems to be a whole lot of evil. Domination systems are everywhere. Are they not real?
This is one of the most fascinating and, frankly, one of the most difficult concepts in the paper to wrap your head around at first. The source defines evil not as a co-equal force.
Not a thing in itself.
No. It's not like Star Wars where you have the light side and the dark side, and they are two equal and opposite forces wrestling for eternity.
That's usually how we think of it, though. Good versus evil, a cosmic boxing match.
The source says that's a profound mistake, a category error. The source defines evil as privation.
Privation, okay, define that for me.
Privation means a lack, a distortion, or rejection of something that should be there. Think of a shadow. A shadow is real in the sense that you can see it, you can measure it, you can stand in it and feel cold, but it has no substance of its own. It is purely the absence of light. You can't have a bucket full of shadow. You can't shine a flash dark.
Or like a cavity in a tooth.
Perfect analogy.
Yeah.
A cavity is real.
Yeah.
It hurts. It can destroy the entire tooth. But the cavity is defined entirely by the missing tooth structure. It is a nothingness that eats a somethingness.
So evil, and by extension, the entire system of domination, is a hole in reality, a lack of good.
Exactly. The source argues that domination systems are parasitic. They don't have their own independent life. They can't create anything. They can only suck life from the good.
A tyrant can only exist because there are people to oppress.
And resources to steal and truths to distort. Domination is organized against reality. It is a rebellion against the way things are.
That puts a completely different spin on history. We usually think of these great domination empires, Rome, the Mongols, the Nazis, the Soviet Union, as these incredibly strong, powerful things.
Right, we fear them because they seem invincible.
But this theory suggests they are actually fundamentally weak, fragile.
They are ontologically weak, even if they are functionally complex. This is a key distinction in the source.
Okay, what's the difference?
The source admits that domination systems can be very organized, they can be sophisticated, they can build incredible war machines and vast surveillance states. That's functional complexity.
The trains run on time.
The trains run on time. But they lack ontological legitimacy. They are, in a metaphysical sense, fighting gravity. They are trying to build a structure that violates the fundamental laws of physics, in this case, the laws of moral physics.
Functional complexity without ontological legitimacy. That's a powerful phrase. It's like trying to build a skyscraper out of ice in the middle of the desert. You can make it look intricate and huge, and it might even stand for a little while, especially at night. But the environment itself, the sun, the heat, reality, is fundamentally hostile to its existence. It is destined to melt.
Which is why, the source argues, domination systems always eventually collapse. They're unsustainable. They run out of energy. They consume everything around them, the people, the trust, the natural resources, until there is nothing left to eat. And then they starve.
Whereas goodness.
Goodness, being aligned with being, is generative. It creates more than it consumes. It is self-sustaining. It's the oak tree, not the forest fire.
Okay, this is making sense. And it leads us directly to the next pillar of the reconstruction, anthropology. If reality is good, then what are humans? Because Eisler and a lot of modern sociologists lean toward the idea that we are products of our environment, social constructs.
The blank slate.
The blank slate. If you raise a kid in a domination culture, they become a dominator. If you raise them in a partnership culture, they become a partner.
And the source pushes back on this hard. It says, no, we are not blank slates. Humans have an intrinsic nature, an inbuilt orientation.
We have a factory setting.
We do. And that factory setting is wired for the good. The source lists these orientations. We are structurally oriented toward truth, toward relational communion, toward moral coherence, and toward meaning realization.
So we crave these things. We don't just learn to want them from our parents. We are the wanting of them. It's part of our design.
It is our design.
But wait, I have to play the skeptic again. It's my job.
Go for it.
If we are wired for truth and goodness and communion, why are we so good at being so bad? Why is history a bloodbath? If we are naturally good, why do we need laws? Why do we need police and prisons?
That's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's where the concept of conscience as ontological interface comes in.
Okay, a lot of big words there. Ontological interface.
It just means our conscience is the built-in sensor that connects us to reality, to the good. But the source explains that while we have this sensor, it can be jammed, its signal can be scrambled, it can be covered up with layers of cultural noise.
Jammed.
Yeah.
Like radio interference.
Exactly. The source is nuanced here. It admits that conscience can be misdirected. If you grew up in a society that tells you day in and day out, slavery is natural, some people are just property, and everyone around you believes it, and the laws enforce it, your conscience might be clouded by that culture. You might even participate in it.
That's the tragic part of history.
It is. But, and this is the absolute key, the capacity to recognize the distortion remains.
So underneath all the cultural programming, the little sensor is still blinking red, even if we can't see it.
Yes, and the proof is in the pudding. Look at how much effort domination systems have to put into propaganda.
Oh, that's a really good point.
If humans were truly blank slates, you could just program them to be slaves and they would be happy about it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't need secret police. You wouldn't need censorship. You wouldn't need to build walls to keep people in. You wouldn't need constant fear-mongering.
The very fact that tyrants have to work so hard to suppress the truth proves that the truth is constantly trying to get out.
It's an immune response. The human spirit is constantly fighting the infection of the lie.
That's actually a very hopeful thought. It implies that being a good person is the path of least resistance. It's our natural state, and that being a dominator takes constant, exhausting work.
It takes immense energy to maintain lie. It takes immense energy to suppress a population. And this connects right back to the ontology. Goodness is self-sustaining. Evil, as privation, is self-consuming. It's constantly burning energy it can't replace.
Which brings us to part 5, teleology, the destination. If reality is good, and humans are wired for good, does that mean that a partnership civilization is inevitable? Can we just sit back and wait for the world to get better on its own?
The source is very, very careful here, and the answer is a firm no. It says partnership is normatively necessary, but not historically inevitable.
Okay, you have to unpack that distinction for me. Normatively necessary versus historically inevitable.
Historically inevitable would mean it's going to happen no matter what we do. It's baked into the timeline, like the sun rising tomorrow.
Karl Marx thought communism was historically inevitable.
He did, and he was profoundly wrong. The source says no, we have free will. That is a real and terrifying power. We can choose to destroy ourselves. We can choose privation. We can choose the shadow.
So we are definitely not on a conveyor belt to utopia.
Definitely not. But partnership is normatively necessary in the sense that if we want to survive and flourish as a species, it is the only option.
Because it's the only system that aligns with reality.
Exactly. Because reality is relationally coherent. Domination systems inherently violate the structure of the universe. Therefore, societies that embrace truth and cooperation tend toward partnership and long-term stability. Those that reject it tend toward collapse.
It's like building a bridge. You don't have to build a bridge that follows the laws of physics. You're free to build a bridge out of cardboard and bubblegum.
Right. You have the absolute freedom to do that.
But if your goal, your normative goal, is to get across the river, then following the laws of physics is necessary. The bridge must be built a certain way, or it won't actually be a bridge for very long. It'll just be garbage in the water.
Precisely. The teleology here isn't some magical force pulling us forward against our will.
Yeah.
It's the simple logic of survival within a moral universe. If we want a civilization that lasts, it must be a partnership civilization, because domination is structurally, fundamentally unsound.
But then I have to ask the question that the source itself brings up, the persistence of domination. If domination is a cardboard bridge, why has it lasted for thousands of years? Why does it often seem so strong, so permanent? Why are there still dictators?
Because, as the source says, privation can organize. The shadow can take a shape. It uses very effective, if ultimately self-destructive, tools.
Like what?
Fear-based control, for one, and, very importantly, scarcity illusions, and the accumulation of power as a form of false security.
Scarcity illusions. That's an interesting one. So convincing people that there isn't enough to go around, so you'd better fight your neighbor for your piece of the pie.
Right. If I can convince you that life is a zero-sum game, that for you to win I have to lose, then Domination starts to seem rational. It becomes a survival strategy. I better hit him before he hits me.
But the source insists these are illusions.
They are illusions. They are structurally unstable. They are destined to fail eventually because they fight against the generative grain of existence.
So it's like holding a beach ball underwater.
That's a great metaphor.
You can do it. If you're strong, you can hold it down for a long time. It takes a lot of effort, constant pressure. But the moment you lose focus, the moment you run out of energy, physics takes over and that ball shoots to the surface.
Exactly. Domination is the constant, exhausting effort of holding the ball down. Partnership is just letting it float.
This moves us into a really fascinating section, Part 6, Systems, History, and Revelation. And there's a really dark but important point here about the limits of systems theory.
Yes. This is a crucial critique of the idea that we can just engineer a better society without addressing the moral core. The expert notes that a society could, in theory, engineer efficient oppression.
Efficient oppression. What does that look like?
Imagine a society with perfect surveillance, automated law enforcement, totally stable hierarchies, and technologically enforced inequality. The economy is stable, there's no crime, there's no dissent.
The trains run on time to the minute.
To the second. If your only metric for a good society is stability or efficiency, that society could be considered a success. It functions, it doesn't collapse.
That's basically the plot of every dystopian novel ever written.
Brave New World, 1984. Stable, efficient, and absolutely horrifying.
Exactly.
And here is the kicker. Without an ontological definition of good, without a bedrock belief that human beings have inherent worth because they participate in an ultimate good, you have no solid argument against that society.
You can't say it's wrong.
You can only say it's not what I prefer. The source argues we need ontology to be able to stand up and say, this efficient, stable system is actually an abomination because it violates the nature of the human soul and the structure of reality.
That's a heavy realization. Efficiency is not the same as goodness. You can have a very efficient concentration camp.
A chilling thought, but a necessary one. And that leads to the source's view of history itself. It proposes viewing history not as a straight line of progress from bad to good.
But as an oscillation.
Yes, like a pendulum swinging back and forth.
Between what?
Between alignment with being, which looks like partnership, and what it calls privation cycles, which look like domination. We align with the good, we flourish, then perhaps we get arrogant or fearful, or we start believing the scarcity lies.
And we drift back into privation.
We build domination structures, they rot from the inside, they eventually collapse under their own weight, and then out of the rubble, you get a restoration movement, a rediscovery of the good.
The source mentions the term Christian realism here. Why that specific term, it seems out of place in a philosophy paper?
It's a specific school of thought associated with thinkers like Reinhold Niebuhr. And the core idea of Christian realism is that we must engage with the tragedy of the world.
Meaning we can't be naive idealists.
Exactly. It acknowledges that because humans have free will, and because we can and do choose privation, progress is never guaranteed. Civilizations can and do collapse. Regressive periods happen. It's a powerful check against a naive optimism that says everything is always getting better.
So we shouldn't be surprised when things go backward. It's part of the cycle of us forgetting and then having to remember the good.
And that raises the question, how do we remember the good? Especially when a whole culture is trying to make us forget. That's where the source brings up the concept of revelation.
Yeah, I wanted to step carefully here. We aren't a religious podcast. We're not here to preach. But the source makes a very specific philosophical argument for the role of revelation. It's not just Bible thumping.
No, it's a structural argument. The source says that we can discover the ultimate good partially through reason, just using our brains, and partially through experience, trial, and error. But to truly anchor moral knowledge, to keep it from drifting, it argues we need authentic revelation.
Which means a message from outside the system.
Yes, information that comes from the source of being itself, not from within the cultural consensus. The philosophical argument is that this prevents moral knowledge from becoming either totally relative or totally authoritarian.
How so?
Well, if it's all relative, I say this is the truth, and you say, no, this is the truth, and we're just at a stalemate. Or worse, the dictator comes in and says, my word is the truth.
And since he has the guns, he wins the argument.
Exactly. Revelation in this philosophical sense serves as an external anchor. It says, the truth is independent of me, of you, and of the dictator. We are all accountable to it. It puts a check on absolute human power.
So it's a safeguard against authoritarianism.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting take. Usually people think of revelation as being authoritarian. God said so, so you have to do it.
But this flips it.
Yeah.
It argues it's actually the one thing that stops humans from playing God. If there is a higher law that even the king is subject to, then no human king can be absolute. That's the foundation of Western liberty in many ways. It's the idea that the king is under the law, not above it.
Okay, wow, we've done the philosophy, we've done the history, we've built the concrete foundation. Now let's get practical. Let's bring this down to earth. Part 7, application. What does a corrected civilization actually look like? If we take this source seriously and we build a society on these 3 pillars, ontological goodness, relational reality, and teleological completion, what changes in my day-to-day life?
The source breaks it down into a few specific sectors. Let's start with the big one, economics.
The source calls it a caring economics.
Yes. But notice this shift. It's not just be nicer with your money or give more to charity. It's an ontological shift in what we consider valuable.
How so?
Currently, our economy almost exclusively values what it calls productive labor, widgets, selling services, trading stocks. It largely ignores or devalues reproductive labor.
Which is what, exactly?
Raising children, caring for the elderly, maintaining the household, building community trust, volunteering. All the work that makes society possible in the first place.
Right. If I work at a factory making plastic forks, that counts toward the GDP. I'm a productive member of society. If I stay home and raise 3 well-adjusted, moral, creative human beings, that counts as 0. Economically, it's invisible work.
Exactly. And the source calls this a profound error in recognizing reality. Generative care, the work of creating and sustaining human life and relationships, is foundational to all other forms of wealth. You can't have a factory without people to work in it. You can't have a market without trust.
So a caring economics would actually prioritize this relational work. It wouldn't just be a side activity you do after your real job.
It would be understood as the central engine of value. We would structure the entire economy to support caregivers, rather than forcing them to squeeze their essential work into the margins of a system that doesn't value it.
Right.
We'd recognize that caregiving is the real work. The widget making is just there to support the life making. We have it completely backward right now.
That's huge. That's a total flip of the entire system. What about politics?
The shift here is in the definition of authority. In a domination system, authority is about holding power. It's about control. I am in charge because I have the gavel or the gun. It's power over.
Right.
In a partnership system grounded in this ontology, authority exists for one reason and one reason only: to protect and foster relational flourishing. It's power with or power for.
So a politician's job description changes from rule the people to gardener of the people's well-being.
That's a great way to put it. Authority becomes a service role. Its only legitimacy comes from how well it aligns with the good. If an authority figure starts destroying relationships or hoarding resources or spreading lies, they lose their ontological legitimacy. They aren't just bad leaders. They are, in a fundamental sense, illegitimate leaders. They are frauds against reality.
And what about education?
This is one of my favorites from the source. It says schools shouldn't just be about teaching skills. We aren't just downloading data into biological hard drives so they can get a job.
Which is what it feels like a lot of the time.
It does. The source argues education should be about forming a perception of reality and cultivating moral discernment.
Learning to see the world correctly.
Learning to spot the difference between substance and privation in the wild. Learning to recognize the good when you see it, and to recognize its absence. If you teach a kid how to build a nuclear reactor, but you don't teach them the moral ontology of why they shouldn't drop a bomb on a city, you haven't educated them. You've just armed them.
You've given a loaded gun to a toddler. And finally, healthcare. How does that change?
Healing is reconceived as restoring alignment with being, not just managing symptoms. It views the person as a whole, a relationally coherent being, not just a collection of broken parts to be fixed by a mechanic.
The mind-body connection.
And the person-community connection. It acknowledges that physical health is inextricably tied to relational and spiritual health. If you are lonely, oppressed, or living in constant fear, your body will eventually get sick. You can't truly fix the body without addressing the nested network the person lives in.
It all comes back to that central idea, doesn't it? Alignment. We aren't inventing some brand new way to live. We are just trying to get back in alignment with how life was actually designed to be lived.
That is the entire crux of the argument.
Okay, let's bring it home. The outro. We've covered a massive amount of ground. We started with Riane Eisler's brilliant diagnosis of domination cultures. We looked at the philosophical gap in her foundation, the lack of an ultimate good,
The so what problem.
the so what problem. And then we explored this deep reconstruction. Being is good, evil is a privation of that good, and the entire goal of civilization is to align ourselves with the relational structure of reality.
And the source offers a corrected thesis statement that I think summarizes this whole thing perfectly.
Let's hear it.
Civilization progresses toward cooperative systems, not because we invent them, but because reality is structured that way. Domination is a contingent, parasitic privation.
I love that. Parasitic privation. It sounds so nasty, but it's so perfectly descriptive. It's not a monster. It's a tick on the dog of history.
It is, and that leads to the final provocative thought that the source leaves us with, and that I want to leave you, the listener, with.
Okay.
The source distinguishes between different types of teleology. There is historical teleology. That's what is actually happening in the news, the wars, the elections, the day-to-day struggles. And then there is natural or moral teleology, what should be happening, based on our fundamental nature.
And the challenge is to be able to tell them apart.
Exactly. Just because something is happening in history, just because a domination system is rising in some part of the world, doesn't mean it's the future. It doesn't mean it's winning in any ultimate sense. It might just be a particularly loud and destructive privation cycle.
So the challenge for you, the listener, is, can you distinguish between the noise of history and the signal of your own nature?
That is the question.
Can you look at a domination system, whether it's in your government, your workplace, or even your own family, and see it not as a scary, powerful monster, but as a shadow, as a privation, as something that is ultimately weak because it fights against the grain of the good?
Because once you see it as a shadow, you stop fearing it in the same way. You realize it has no power of its own. It only has the power you give it by believing its lies. And then you start turning on the light.
And that is what partnership is. It's turning on the light. This whole framework, this ontology, it gives partnership the backbone it was missing. It moves the idea from, it would be nice if we all got along, to, we must get along because that is the only way to be in alignment with reality.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Thank you for going on this journey with us. It was a deep one, maybe our deepest yet, but I think it was profoundly worth it. Our challenge to you: look for the privation, look for the substance in your own daily lives, and we'll catch you in the next deep dive.
You know, I was walking through the city the other day, just one of those gray Tuesdays, and I found myself looking around at the sheer scale of everything. The skyscrapers, the traffic, the, endless stream of headlines on everyone's phones. And I just had this distinct sinking feeling.
Yeah.
It was this heavy question of, is this it? Is the world just this chaotic, grinding machine?
Right.
We see so much violence, so much greed, systems that seem designed to just crush people.
And the cynicism starts to creep in.
It does. It's that little voice in the back of your head that says, well, it's a dog-eat-dog world.
Might makes right.
Exactly. It's that whisper that says maybe that's just the natural law of the universe. We want to believe things should be better, that, partnership and kindness are the goal. But we're afraid that maybe kindness is just a nice hobby.
For people who can afford it.
Yeah. Like maybe nature is actually on the side of the bullies.
And that tension, that exact tension between our moral gut feeling that the world is broken and the fear that reality just doesn't care, that is exactly where we're starting today.
Okay.
It is the central conflict of the source material we have in front of us. We're looking at a really fascinating stack of notes that critiques and expands on the work of Riane Eisler.
Riane Eisler. Okay, for those who haven't read her, she's the partnership versus domination theorist.
Yes.
Right? She wrote The Chalice and the Blade.
That's the one.
Yeah.
She basically mapped out human history and said we have two fundamental choices in how we organize society.
Two models.
Two models. We have domination systems ruled by the sword, rigid hierarchy, men over women. Or we have partnership systems, which are based on mutual respect, linking rather than ranking, and shared power.
Which sounds great. I mean, if you polled everyone listening right now, I think 99% of people would vote for partnership.
You'd think so.
But the source material we have today, a text titled Ontology and the Teleological Foundation of Partnership Civilization, it throws a massive curveball.
It really does.
It argues that while Eisler was right about the history and the sociology, she totally missed the philosophy.
It's a bold claim, isn't it? The source argues that she describes how domination works perfectly, but she fails to prove why partnership is objectively true.
And without that proof.
Partnership is just a preference. It's like picking vanilla over chocolate, just something we happen to like.
And that's our mission for this deep dive. We are going to see if we can move from just, hoping for a better world to understanding that good isn't something we invent. The argument here is that good is actually the structural engineering of reality itself.
We're moving from sociology, how people act, to ontology.
Where reality is.
Exactly.
Ontology. Okay, let's pause there because that is a $5 word and I want to make sure we don't leave anyone behind.
It is. Simply put, ontology is the study of being. It asks the big question, what is the basement of the universe made of? Is it a cold, dead vacuum where we just, accidentally evolved?
Or does existence itself have a character? A direction?
That's the question. Does being have a direction?
Okay, so we're asking what the foundation of the house looks like.
Yeah.
But before we get to the basement, let's look at the house Eisler built, because the source gives her a lot of credit for her diagnosis.
Oh, absolutely. She nailed the problem. The source highlights her concept of systemic social formation.
Which is a fancy way of saying you can't put things in silos.
Right. Everything is connected. You can't have, say, a tyrannical family structure, a father who rules with an iron fist, and then expect to have a democratic, partnership-based government.
They mirror each other.
Yeah.
What you learn at the dinner table, you practice in the voting booth.
They're nested networks. If your economy is based on extraction and exploitation, your politics will be too. You can't change one without the other shifting.
And this leads to her definition of domination cultures. I think we all intuitively know what this feels like, but the source breaks it down. Coercive authority, rigid hierarchies, and this one really stood out to me. The instrumentalization of persons.
That is a chilling phrase. Instrumentalization.
It sounds like turning someone into an instrument, a tool.
That is exactly what it is. It means treating a human being not as a conscious subject with, a soul and rights, but as a means to an end.
Like a battery in the Matrix, or just a row on a spreadsheet labeled human capital.
Precisely. In a domination culture, people are resources to be extracted. And speaking of extraction, that's the economic model too. It's a vampire model.
So we have this web, a culture that normalizes violence, uses people like tools. Eisler maps this out and says, look, this leads to misery. We should do partnership instead. That seems like a solid argument. Why does our source call this sociological description without ontological grounding? That sounds like a pretty harsh academic burn.
It's a critical distinction. Think of it this way. Just because you can describe exactly how a car engine explodes doesn't mean you can tell me where the car should have driven.
Description isn't prescription.
Exactly.
So Eisler's like a mechanic saying the engine is smoking and the wheels are off, but she's not giving us a map to the destination.
Precisely. The source argues if we stop there, we haven't actually proven why we ought to change it. I mean, if partnership is just a better social arrangement, the immediate question is, better for whom?
Right.
The dictator at the top of the domination pyramid, the Genghis Khan, or the corrupt CEO would say the system is working just fine for him.
Who are we to tell the guy winning the game that he's playing it wrong if the only rule is survival of the fittest?
And that brings us to the philosophic void. The source has this section called Beginning Without Being, which sounds poetic, but it's pointing out a dangerous gap. It argues Eisler has teleology without source.
Teleology. Another Greek word. We're getting a workout today.
We are, but it's a crucial tool for thinking. Telos means an end, a goal, a purpose. A teleological view says things are going somewhere. An acorn has a teleology to become an oak tree. It's not just a nut, it's a tree in waiting.
Okay, so the acorn has a true north. It knows what it's supposed to be.
Right. Now, Eisler gives us a direction. She says we should move toward partnership. But the source argues she doesn't give us a destination. She doesn't explain why reality itself would tend that way. She essentially says, we evolved, and we can choose to be nice because it's more pleasant.
But the source says that's not enough.
It's not enough because of what they call the moral emergence problem. If morality just emerges from culture, if it's just something we made up as we went along, then we have a huge problem when we look at something like the Third Reich.
Because the Nazis had a culture. They had a consensus.
They had a system. Exactly. If morality is just cultural agreement, then a domination culture like Nazi Germany isn't wrong in an objective sense. It's just different.
Right.
It's just a different cultural consensus. If they had won the war and convinced everyone that their way was right, then Under a purely sociological model, it would be right.
That is actually terrifying. You're saying that without an objective standard, we can't actually call evil evil.
We can only call it unpopular or inefficient or culturally distinct, but we can't call it wrong. The source argues that to judge a system as evil, you need a standard outside of that system, an anchor.
Like you need to look at the stars, not the waves.
Exactly. Eisler gives us the waves. This source is demanding the stars.
So let's look at the stars. This is where we get into the fix. And the first ontological claim is a big one. Being is good.
This is the bedrock. It's an ancient philosophical idea, but it changes everything. The claim is that reality existence itself is not neutral. It's not a blank canvas. Existence flows from a good that is life-generating, relationally coherent, and self-giving. To truly exist is to be good.
I have to play devil's advocate here. I mean, I watch the news, I see war, suffering, mosquitoes. If being is good, what is all that? How do you explain the mess?
That is the second claim, and this is the one that really flips the script. The source defines evil as privation.
Privation, like being deprived of something.
Yes. It means a lack of something that should be there. The argument is that evil is not a substance. It's not a thing that fights against good as an equal opposite. It's not Star Wars with the light side and the dark side as two balanced forces.
It's not. I think most of us think of it exactly like that.
The source says no. According to this ontology, evil is the loss of being. It's a distortion, a hole in the fabric.
Okay.
Think of a shirt. You can have a shirt without a hole, but you can't have a hole without a shirt.
The hole relies on the shirt to exist.
Right.
You can't go to the store and buy a bag of hole.
Exactly. The hole is parasitic. It needs the shirt to exist, but its very existence destroys the shirt's purpose.
Whoa. Okay, so let's apply that. A domination system, a dictatorship, an exploitative company, that's a hole.
Yes. The source calls them parasitic. Now, this is important because I can hear people asking, but wait, dictatorships are powerful. And the text addresses this. It says they have functional complexity.
Meaning they can build armies, organize bureaucracies, build monuments. They look strong.
They look real. The Third Reich built the Autobahn. They had nice uniforms. They seemed very organized.
Right.
But they have no ontological stability. They are organizing against the grain of reality. They're trying to build a society on a foundation of holes, trying to build life on a foundation of anti-life.
So it's like an engine running with sand in the gears. It might run for a while, maybe even fast and loud, but it is mechanically destined to seize up.
That is a perfect analogy. It can't run forever because it violates the very mechanics of the engine.
And that changes the whole fight. We aren't trying to push a boulder uphill against a universe that doesn't care. We're trying to clear the path for the river to flow where it naturally wants to go.
Exactly. Domination systems are destined to collapse not because we hate them, but because they're fighting the fundamental structure of existence. Gravity eventually wins.
That is surprisingly hopeful. But wait, if we're designed for this good, why are we so good at being bad? Why is history just this long list of wars? The source talks about an anthropological correction.
Right. There's this popular idea, and Eisler leans into this a bit, that humans are blank slates, born empty, and society just writes on us.
So if you're born in Sparta, you become a warrior. Born in a peace commune, you're a pacifist.
And the source says, not quite. It argues for a realist anthropology. It says we have an intrinsic orientation. We aren't blank. We are hardwired for truth, for a relational communion. We aren't just taught what is good. We're designed to recognize it.
The text calls the conscience an ontological interface. That sounds very sci-fi.
It does, but think of it like a compass. You can spin a compass around, you can put a magnet next to it and confuse it. That's what domination cultures do. They confuse our compass. They tell us slavery is normal or greed is good, and for centuries people might believe it.
But the compass needle is always trying to snap back north.
Always. That's why slavery didn't last forever. Even when history misdirects us, our internal capacity to recognize the distortion eventually kicks in. We feel the friction. We feel the hole in the shirt, and we want to patch it.
We can't tolerate the lie forever.
It clashes with our internal wiring.
So we have this tension. Reality is good. Humans are wired for good. But we still have these massive systems of domination. The source asks, why does domination persist? If it's just a hole, why is the hole so big?
Because privation, that hole, can temporarily organize. It uses fear. It uses scarcity illusions. It tells you there isn't enough pie, so you better kill your neighbor to get his slice.
And fear is a powerful organizer.
A very powerful organizer. It creates that functional complexity we talked about. but it's ontologically empty.
It's house built on sand.
And this leads to what the source calls nuanced inevitability. This is a really subtle but important point. It's not that partnership is historically inevitable. We could blow ourselves up tomorrow. We are free to fail.
We can choose the sand.
We can choose the sand. But the source argues partnership is normatively necessary, meaning if you want a civilization that survives and flourishes, you must choose partnership.
It's like physics.
It's exactly like physics. You can choose to ignore gravity and jump off a cliff, but you cannot choose the consequences. You will hit the ground.
That really raises the stakes.
Okay.
Okay, let's get practical. The source outlines 3 pillars for building the future.
Right. And these are building blocks. Pillar 1 is ontological goodness, recognizing that people have inherent worth, not just utility. You matter because you are, not because of what you do.
Okay, pillar 2.
Relational reality, truth, and justice aren't just concepts. They are the proper ordering of relationships.
And pillar 3.
Teleological completion, understanding that human flourishing is something we discover, not something we invent. You can't just decide that a plant drinks gasoline, it drinks water. We have a nature.
I want to zoom in on the economic application here because this is where the rubber meets the road. Caring economics.
This is huge. In our current system, often the things that actually sustain life-raising kids, caring for the elderly, keeping a home running, are considered non-economic. They're invisible.
They don't count toward GDP. There's that old economist joke. If a man marries his housekeeper, the GDP goes down.
Exactly, even though the work is exactly the same. And the source argues this is insane. It calls this reproductive labor, the labor of reproducing society itself. Care, teaching, nursing, mentoring. The source argues this must be the foundation of the economy.
Not an afterthought.
Not at all. It's the soil that the economy grows out of. Without it, you have no workers, no consumers, no people.
So an economy that destroys relationships to make a profit?
Is cannibalizing its own foundation. It's eating the shirt to make the button. Caring economics isn't just charity. It's about recognizing where value actually comes from.
And the source touches on politics and education, too. Politics should protect flourishing, not just manage power. And education, I like this part, should form the perception of reality, not just teach skills.
That goes right back to the compass. Education shouldn't just be about how to turn the gears of the machine. It should be about how to read the compass, how to discern truth from lies, how to recognize when a system is becoming parasitic. It's about wisdom, not just intelligence.
It's incredible how this reframes everything. We started this deep dive with Riane Eisler's sociology, her partnership model. And yeah, partnership is nicer, but we've ended up somewhere so much deeper.
We've ended up with an ontology, a theory of existence.
That says partnership isn't just nice, it's true, with capital T.
That is the aha moment for me. We don't have to invent a better world from scratch. The world is already round. The structure of reality is built for connection, for goodness. When we build partnership systems, we are finally swimming downstream.
We're finally aligning ourselves with the way reality is actually built. That is such a relief. It takes the pressure off. We aren't fighting the universe, we're joining it. But the source leaves us with one final kind of provocative thought. Constructive engagement with tragedy.
Yes. This keeps us grounded. It prevents us from becoming naive optimists. It reminds us that even though the structure of reality is good, historical failure is possible.
We are free to deviate.
We are free to build the parasitic structures. And those structures have real consequences. They cause real suffering before they eventually collapse.
So just because the house on sand will fall doesn't mean it won't hurt people while it's standing.
Exactly. The collapse of a domination system is inevitable because of the ontology we discussed, but it's also tragic for the people living inside it. We have a responsibility not just to wait for the collapse, but to actively build the house on rock.
And that's the question for you, the listener. As you go back to your life, your work, your family, your community, look at the systems you are in. Are they building on that bedrock of good, on inherent worth and real connection?
Or are they parasitic structures, functionally complex, maybe even profitable right now, but ontologically empty and destined to run out of energy?
It's a heavy question.
But it's the only one that matters, because gravity always wins.
Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Until next time.